Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Please smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Bond Court is now in session.
Okay, we're live on YouTube. For the record, this is position number 27, State of Georgia versus Keandre Juwan Johnson. Mr. Johnson is charged in warrant number 2022 CW 52169 with committing the offense of aggravated assault. Mr. Johnson is charged in warrant number 2022 CW 52170 with committing the offense of murder. Mr. Johnson is finally charged in warrant number 2022 CW 52171 with committing the offense of aggravated assault. Mr. Johnson is here present. He's being represented by attorney Kirby Clements. The state is present, is being represented by Cheryl Freeman. Mr. Johnson, I just want to caution you that anything you say during this proceeding is not privileged, nor is it confidential. So please don't say anything you would not want the whole world to know. Do you understand that, sir? Okay. Ms. Freeman, you may swear in your witness and present your case.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, before we start, is this matter being recorded now?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That when I say it's going live on YouTube, is being recorded.
All right. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Thank you. Detective, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear and affirm? You can unmute yourself. Do you swear and affirm? Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to provide in the matter of State of Georgia versus Keandre Johnson will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please tell us your name and how you're employed.
Detective Andrea Rosas, employed with the Clayton Police Department.
How long have you worked at the Clayton County Police Department?
About 4.5 years.
And Detective, were you assigned to work on a case involving a shooting that allegedly occurred on April 22nd of 2022 around 3156 Mount Zion Road?
That's correct.
And is that location at an apartment complex?
It is.
Did the shooting happen at a certain apartment or a building there?
It happened in front of building 16.
Were you dispatched to the scene?
Yes.
Please tell us what you learned from your investigation.
Once Uniform Patrol requested for detectives to respond to the scene, I did observe upon arrival a black and color Chevy Suburban collided into two vehicles and was informed by Uniform Patrol that there had been a shooting involving the occupant of the Suburban. The driver received a apparent gunshot wound to the right side of his face or head area, and the second occupant was located in the adjacent apartment complex. He ran from the scene and called 911 from help from there.
Do you recall the driver of that Suburban? Was that Roderick Powers?
No, the driver of the Suburban it was Terrell Smith. That's the deceased victim.
Okay. And Roderick Powers was the other occupant of the Suburban?
That's correct.
Okay. Was the decedent pronounced dead on the scene?
Not on the scene. About 2 or 3 days later was when he was officially pronounced. The hospital did advise he was more than likely brain dead, but was given the family some time to determine what they were going to do as far as terminating, or they gave them a 24-hour time period.
Just so we're clear, the decedent, I believe you stated, or can you tell us where exactly he had a gunshot wound?
It was to the right side of his head near the ear area.
From the scene detective, were you able to determine if the gunshot came from outside of the vehicle or inside?
Yes, the gunshots came from outside of the vehicle. Specifically, they were towards the passenger side.
The individual who was found in the adjacent building, was he seated in the passenger side of the Suburban?
Yes.
Did he sustain any injuries as a result of gunshot wounds?
Yes, he sustained a gunshot wound to his right hand, I believe, and a gunshot wound to the left inner part of his, the inner part of his left thigh.
Was he taken to the hospital for medical treatment?
He was.
Were you able to speak to that other individual who was in the Suburban?
Yes, I was.
What was he able to tell you that happened?
Initially, Roderick advised that he was accompanying Terrell to the apartment. He advised he did not get out of the vehicle, and only Terrell went inside. He said afterwards, when they were getting ready to leave, an individual was walking from the breezeway, and he asked Terrell if he knew that individual. They both looked out, and Terrell advised he was familiar with him. The other individual saw them and made a comment such as, "Can't be no way," and began shooting at them.
You stated that Roderick, that's what he first told you. Did he give you a different statement at a later time?
Yes, a follow-up interview was conducted with him, in which he advised initially he was nervous with police, and stated the reason they were at that specific apartment was because Keandre Johnson owed Terrell money, and Terrell was going to see Keandre about getting his money.
Was Roderick able to identify Keandre Johnson?
We attempted to conduct a photo lineup with him. He advised he was not able to pick him out of the lineup, but stated he knew the person that lived at the apartment complex to be Keandre.
Was he able to tell you how he knew the person there was Keandre Johnson?
He advised through Terrell telling him they were going to go see Keandre.
Were there any other witnesses at the scene of the shooting?
The only other witness was a UPS driver who heard the gunshots, didn't see it, but he did hear the gunshots. And he saw when the vehicle collided into the other ones.
Were you able to determine if there were any surveillance videos to show the shooting?
No, there are no surveillance videos in that complex.
Detective, was Keandre Johnson on the scene when you got there?
He was not.
Have you since been able to speak to Mr. Johnson?
No, I didn't get the opportunity to speak to Mr. Johnson.
Okay. Did Mr. Powers indicate, or were you able to determine if they returned any fire, if they shot at anyone from inside the Suburban?
Yes, it did appear that they did shoot from out the vehicle. A firearm was located in the vehicle. We did locate or observed damages to the apartment complex from the gunshots.
Were you able to locate a firearm that Mr. Keandre Johnson allegedly used?
No.
When you got the statement from Mr. Powers, did he indicate whether or not Keandre Johnson was inside of a vehicle when he shot at them?
No, he advised he was out on foot.
Did all of this take place in Clayton County?
It did.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Clements.
Yes, good morning, Detective. Is it Rosas, R-O-S-A-S?
Yes, Rosa.
All right, thank you. Let me start off. The surviving person, his name is what?
Roderick Powers.
Mr. Powers. Did Mr. Powers actually gave you 3 different statements? Isn't that correct?
He gave 2.
Well, let me ask you. In the warrant application, you indicated that he said that first, that they went to the apartment complex to see a female, and a gray Nissan began circling the vehicle. Do you recall that?
Yes.
All right, and then he says an unknown male emerged from the hall, and that's the person that fired the shot. Correct?
That's correct.
All right, and now, so at that point in time, with that first version, he did not indicate a name or anything. Correct?
No.
And he didn't give a physical description at all, correct?
He did give a physical description.
In his first statement at the hospital?
No, well, I didn't talk to him at the hospital. I talked to him after he was discharged.
Okay, so there was so who was it that spoke to him at the hospital the first time?
I believe Detective Joseph.
Okay, now, when he was discharged from the hospital, you spoke to him at that point, correct?
Yes, once he was discharged.
Yeah, and when you spoke to him, he told you that he had gone to the apartment complex so that the decedent could go and meet with his girlfriend, correct?
Yes.
And that the decedent went inside his girlfriend's apartment for about 30 minutes, correct? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
That's correct.
And what apartment was that?
1602.
And whose apartment? So he says that the deceased went into apartment 1602 and was inside of 1602 for 30 minutes?
Yes, that's what he stated.
All right, and then he also told you that some unknown males began circling around him in a gray Nissan Altima?
That's correct.
All right, and then where did the shooter come from in that version?
He advised it came from the breezeway.
All right, but again, he didn't give you a name, and is that correct?
That's correct. He didn't give a name.
And he said that the male who came from the breezeway said, "Man, ain't no way." Is that correct?
Something to that effect, yes.
All right. Now, you spoke to him again, I take it, when you showed him the photo lineup, correct?
Yes.
All right. And at the time that you gave him the photo lineup, he advised that they were actually there to visit the weed man, to go see the weed man, and they knew that Keandre lived in 1602. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. So now, where was the weed man supposedly?
He did not advise or give a specific apartment. He just advised it was close to the front or entrance of the apartment, but he did not give the numerics.
All right. And in that third version, he went and he said that they went to visit the weed man, but they swung by Keandre's house because they knew Keandre lived there. Is that correct?
Yes, he advised that same day.
All right. And I'm sorry, when you say that same day, you're saying they saw the weed man earlier and then came back, or what do you mean by he advised the same day?
No, I'm saying he advised that part that second time that I interviewed him after he was shown the photo lineup.
Okay. So in total, just so we're clear, there were 3 interviews, 1 by Detective Johnson and 2 by you, correct?
Joseph, the
I mean,
first one,
Detective
yes, in the
Joseph, I'm
hospital.
sorry. Detective Joseph. All right. So now, when on this third one, he says that they went by because he said that this person owed that Keandre apparently owed owed the decedent $1,500. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Now, during all of these exchanges, did you ever ask him why he gave you a different version? Why different versions have been given thus far?
Yes, he did advise that the initial interview after he was discharged, he was intimidated or nervous after the fact, and that's why he gave that first statement.
But he never produced any evidence to you that he'd been threatened by my client, Keandre Johnson, correct?
No.
All right, so this was he just told you that's how he felt?
Yes, that's why he gave us that first version.
All right. Did he explain where the males in the gray Nissan Altima came from?
No.
Did he tell you that there was in fact no gray Nissan Altima with a bunch of males in there?
He said he did see the gray Nissan. He was adamant about that part.
He said he was adamant that he did see it or did not see it?
That he did.
Okay. Now, with respect to the injuries that were sustained by the decedent, he was shot, you indicated in the head just behind the ear?
Yes.
All right.
In that area.
And I'm sorry?
Yes, in that area.
Now, with respect to the gunshots, I think you indicated that he said that the decedent fired shots after the first set of shots were fired. Is that correct?
That the decedent fired shots first?
No, after the shots had been fired at him.
Yes.
All right. Did he indicate whether there was a gun battle back and forth or just that the male in the breezeway fired shots and then the decedent started shooting back?
That's the male shot first and then Mr. Terrell shot back.
All right. Now, were you aware as to whether Mr. Terrell's wounds that he received to the head were instantaneously debilitating and fatal?
When our initial officers arrived, they did say he was unconscious, was breathing, but he was unresponsive.
All right. So did your witness indicate to you how it was that the decedent was able to shoot back after he'd been shot in the head?
No.
All right. Did you speak with the doctor to find out whether he was able to fire back after he'd been shot in the head?
No.
All right. Were there shell casings that were recovered inside of the vehicle?
Yes, there were shell casings recovered.
All right. And were all the shell casings of the same caliber?
I don't recall if they were the same caliber or not. I would have to go through my case file.
Well, I mean, I think that the witness told you that he did not have a weapon at the time. And so I guess I'm trying to figure out whether you determined that, well, it looks like there was more than one weapon being fired from inside of the car.
That's correct. He advised he didn't have one.
All right. And did the evidence that you found substantiate that claim that he didn't have a weapon or that there was more than one gun being shot from inside the car?
No, it was only one gun found in the shell casings. Like I said, I don't recall the exact caliber to give you an exact answer.
Did you find any shell casings outside of the vehicle?
Yes.
All right. And were they all the same caliber?
I don't recall that. I don't want to give a false answer.
All right. Well, let me ask you this. With regards to the shell casings, did they appear to be fired from that breezeway or were they consistent with being fired from the car?
They were found near the apartment 1602.
Right. But I guess the shooting happened near 1602. So I'm just trying to figure out whether the shell casings you found, did you conclude that they were being fired from someone shooting from the breezeway, as the witness said, or from someone shooting from the car?
I don't remember the exact location where the shell casings were found.
All right. Did you ever attempt to locate this weed man that they were talking about?
I didn't have any information, no names, no aliases, nothing to even begin.
Did you determine whether or not the deceased actually went into apartment 1602?
I was not able to determine that.
All right. Did the witness tell you that he made that up too, or no?
No.
So as we sit here right now, is it your testimony that the deceased went into 1602 or that he did not go into 1602 at all?
Well, based on Mr. Powers' testimonies, he said initially he did go into it. And then afterwards, when they were driving up, that's when they saw Mr. Keandre.
All right. So, and I'm a little unclear on that. So does that mean that that Mr. Powers said that the deceased actually went into the apartment? That's all I want to know. Did he stand on he went into the apartment?
I'm looking in my notes. So in his second testimony, he did not go into the apartment.
Okay. Now, with respect to the identity of my client, you indicated that the witness was unable, that Mr. Powers was unable to pick Mr. Johnson out of a photographic lineup. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. So, and all he knew was that he was told that there was a man named Keandre that owed Mr. Terrell some money.
That's correct.
All right. But, and out of the three different versions that were told, two involving an unknown male, and the third one supposedly involving Keandre, how is it that your witness, Mr. Powers, was able to identify or say that with certainty that it was Keandre that was the one shooting the gun?
He advised he knew Keandre from Terrell. The Terrell was helping Keandre out with job because he had a business. So he knew Keandre through Terrell. And once we were on scene, the leasing office also provided us with the listed name for the apartment complex, and it was also for Mr. Keandre.
All right. So now, with respect to he knew Keandre, did he indicate that he had seen Keandre before, or he just knew the name Keandre from Mr. Terrell?
He advised he knew him from Mr. Terrell.
All right. But he was unable to pick him out of a photographic lineup?
Correct.
Did you ask him, how is it that you know someone, but you can't identify that person that you claim to know?
No, I don't believe I asked him that.
All right. So what other evidence do you have that indicates that Keandre Johnson was the person that was shooting at the two people that are the listed victims in the warrant?
I have the secondary victim's testimony. The name he provided did corroborate with the name provided by the leasing office for the male that lived at the apartment complex, and his initial description that he gave matched the description for Mr. Keandre.
All right. So, but the description that he gave you was just a general description, correct? I mean, he gave you, black male, light skinned, tall.
With tattoo on the face.
Right. And but in his prior statements to you all, he never described that person to you, correct? Light skinned male, tall, tattoos on the face.
Yes, he gave that description initially.
At the very first interview with the first detective?
Yes.
So other than Mr. Powers' statements about what took place, you have no other independent evidence to suggest that Keandre Johnson was even present? Correct?
I have evidence, nothing. I have pending evidence that
What
I'm
is
waiting. Phone data rips.
Okay. Did he tell you that the deceased actually went there and attempted to shoot Mr. Johnson first?
No.
Do you know how many shots the deceased fired?
I know one for sure.
And that's the shell. And how many shell cases did you find inside of the car?
I would have to go through my case file for the exact number.
Hold on, I'm looking right here. It just says shell casings in what I have.
Okay, I apologize on that. I thought I printed out the CSI report. So the initial report doesn't state the exact number.
And you don't have any evidence that there was any, do you have any evidence that there was a dispute between these parties?
Based on what he stated, that the comment that ain't no way, and then in the follow-up interview when he stated they pulled up and Terrell asked Keandre what was going on with his money. So he advised there was a brief exchange of words.
All right, and that brief exchange was just what's going on with my money, and then my client is alleged to have started shooting right then?
Yes.
All right. Just a second. Do you have any other witnesses that were present besides the UPS driver that you described, or in addition to the UPS driver, who described the shooter as a black male with face tattoos?
No.
All right. Do you have any other evidence that, besides the outstanding cell phone data rips, that indicates that Keandre Johnson had a motive to shoot this man?
No.
All right. So there was no prior argument, no disputes. And with respect to the injuries of the deceased, did you? I don't know if I asked you this earlier. Do you have any information as to whether he would have been able to fire a shot after he was shot, or whether he would have had to only been able to shoot first?
No, I don't have any information on that.
All right. And as to the three stories that Mr. Powers gave, how were you able to determine that the one that he gave, the last one that he gave, is in fact the correct one?
I already had the name of Keandre Johnson before even speaking to Terrell. So when the detective that was presenting the photo lineup for me advised he could not pick out a person, but did advise that the person involved was Keandre, that corroborated the information provided from the leasing office.
All right, and just how did you have Keandre's name already?
From the leasing office, they provided us with the listed names for that specific apartment.
All right, so I guess I misunderstood. So you did not have anyone listing Keandre Johnson's name as a shooter until Mr. Powers told you that in the last interview, correct?
Correct.
All right, and in the prior interviews, he never listed Keandre Johnson as the shooter, correct?
Correct.
And did he ever indicate that the individuals from that gray Nissan Altima were shooters?
No.
All right. And you got no statement from Mr. Johnson, is that correct?
No.
All right. Did you speak to the person inside of apartment 1602?
There was nobody inside the apartment.
So at the time of the shooting, you all attempted to talk to somebody, I take it, at the apartment, and there was no one there?
No, there was nobody there.
All right. Did you all tell Mr. Powers that, hey, you told us somebody was there and there's nobody there?
He advised he knew Keandre lived there. He possibly fled and was hiding out.
Mm-hmm. And to your knowledge, Mr. Johnson turned himself in, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Just 1 second. Were you all able to make a determination as to whether Mr. Powers actually shot? That is, did you take his clothing to see if there was gunpowder residue or anything on it?
I don't believe the clothing was taken from the hospital, so I didn't obtain the clothing.
All right. And I think that might be my last question. Let me just look over here. Mhm. I know you said that there was no surveillance video, but did you determine whether any of the other residents had a Ring video camera that was present that would have recorded what took place?
None that would have recorded the actual shooting taking place.
But were there Ring videos that just recorded something?
I believe one only recorded the sound, but none recorded or were in the view to record the actual shooting.
Okay. Did the sound include hearing the words ain't no way or anything like that?
No, this was apartment across, so it wouldn't have captured a talking.
Understood.
From that distance.
And I take it didn't show any gray Nissan driving around?
No, it wouldn't have captured that, I believe.
All right. That's all the questions that I can think of right now, Your Honor. Let me just double check. Oh, I'm sorry. Did Mr. Powers give you a motive for Mr. Johnson?
For the shooting?
Yes.
He just advised that because he felt Mr. Johnson was possibly jealous of Mr. Terrell because he was a young male, was starting up a business, had money. So that's the only motive he could give.
And that was in your first interview of him, but his second interview with police, correct?
No, that would have been my second interview, the follow-up.
Okay, the follow-up interview, but he didn't give you that motive in your first interview, correct?
That's correct.
All right, and he didn't give the first detective that motive either, correct?
That's correct.
All right.
I was going to say, Mr. Clements, don't
That's
say
all.
that you have no more questions.
Yeah, no, I said I thought I was done, but I turned the page and I saw like 3 other boxes. Now I'm done. That's all the questions I have.
Okay, Ms. Freeman. Any
There's
follow-up?
no additional questions to state rest.
Okay. Let me ask.
Go ahead.
Okay, I have a question for Detective Rojas. Based upon what I've listened to, if you lived at apartment 1602 and someone said Detective Rojas, under the facts that are present here, that Detective Rojas was involved in the shooting, what do you have to show that that would be false? Do you understand my question?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, so I hear that Mr. Terrell or Mr. Johnson was the person that is alleged to have done the shooting. And I understand there's more investigation to take place, but I'm keeping it in the back of my mind. I haven't made up my mind, but it seems as though the evidence, as I heard it, as it came out, is that these two individuals, Mr. Terrell and Mr. Powers, went over to this location, and there was a desire to meet with Mr. Johnson, presumably about money. There were several different statements that were made, but I was just trying to listen to evidence independent of that helps to point to the likelihood that Mr. Johnson may have committed this. And this will be for Ms. Freeman to argue, but that was the basis of that question. And so you don't have to answer that, but Ms. Freeman, go ahead. Or are you gonna just waive opening and?
What state waives opening?
Okay, Mr. Clements, I'm ready to hear from you.
Your Honor, I would urge the court to find that there is no probable cause. Obviously, in determining probable cause, the court can consider the credibility and certainly the totality of circumstances of the evidence. And what we have here is a witness who is given three different versions. One, that there was, that they went over there to see some female, and then another one that they went over there to see the decedent's girlfriend, and that he went into the apartment and there are these males driving around in this Nissan Altima, and then there's a shooting. And then finally, he says, well, I don't know Terrell. I mean, I don't know Keandre, but I know Keandre through this guy, but I can't pick him out. And he's the shooter. The story just doesn't make sense. I mean, at a certain level, you just have to go, just because you put out facts that say someone did something, the court is certainly required to take do a little bit more introspection and examination of the record. And here, the record is the one witness says three different stories. He's given three different reasons for being there. There's no motive other than jealousy, apparently, without indication that they knew that my client was even aware of anything. We have the decedent being shot in the head and yet somehow managing to shoot back, which in and of itself doesn't make any sense. He was declared brain dead, or they indicated that he was on for 2 or 3 days while the family made the decision to pull life support. So the evidence that we have is insufficient, I would argue, to establish probable cause. Saying that it was Keandre because the victim said that we're going to go see Keandre and he's got tattoos and the like, that's fine. But at the end of the day, he's also given 2 other versions. So we have to evaluate all of that. And that's why I asked the detective what other evidence did she have that indicated that it was my client and what took place. And there is none. So I would just say that for the purposes of probable cause, they have failed on identity of my client. There is, in fact, no identification. All they have is that he lives at that apartment, which, again, is insufficient. And I would also add that the version itself that was given likewise doesn't make sense. The decedent is shot in the head. People who get shot in the head and die from that gunshot aren't really shooting back. You either shot in the head and die, or rendered unconscious and brain dead, or not. But the state has not even provided a reasonable explanation to explain that process. And I would just say that those are the matters at this stage of the process that I think the state needs to solidify somewhat to justify my client's continued detention, because right now there is an insufficient probable cause to show that he was involved.
Ms. Freeman, before we get to you, I have a question for Mr. Clements. I understand your argument as it relates to the deceased or decedent being shot in the head, but there was also another person in the vehicle that was shot twice. Isn't it probable or possible that the person that was the passenger who was shot in the hand and the thigh, that was the first person shot, and then the Mr. Terrell returned fire and then he was shot? Isn't that just as likely as your theory?
Well, it may be likely, but that's not the evidence that the detective testified to. At this stage, he said he shot, and they didn't really give a chronology. So I'm just going on what the record is. When he was shot.
I understand that. But
and yes,
hold on. If under your theory, at some point in time, the passenger is shot in the thigh and shot in the hand, but that didn't occur first, that occurred second. First, the decedent is shot in the head. And if it's coming from, what direction, and I agree with you, the testimony is kind of unclear as to some of this stuff, but I believe it's within the realm of possibility for that to have occurred.
I will accept that in the realm of possibility that could have occurred, and which is why I wasn't hinging my entire argument on that fact. I mean, as a practical matter, they haven't even established that my client wasn't even, if my client was in fact a shooter, he wasn't shooting in defense of himself, because he's given 2-3 different reasons for showing up at this place. 1, to visit some unknown female. 2, to visit a girlfriend. And then 3, they were going to see the weed man, but instead decided to swing by my client's house to ask about $1,500. I mean, as a practical matter, it seems more like they came by armed with a weapon. There was no weed man at all, because the detective says there is no weed man. They got no name, no description, nothing. that this is all a ruse and they were trying to kill my client. Any one of those things is certainly out there as in the realm of possibilities. And that's why I say that the probable cause is lacking, because as we have it right now, we've got a story that just doesn't make sense. You're there to see an unknown female, a girlfriend, you're in the house, not in the house. Males are driving around in an Altima looking at you, or are you there because, or you went to go get drugs from some other person and you just happen to go, oh, let me swing by this guy's house to see about my $1,500, which again, while I have a gun, none of this makes any sense. I mean,
Judge, I'm gonna say at this point, Attorney Clements has definitely made his argument.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Freeman.
I'll say that I think a lot of Attorney Clements' arguments are certainly for Superior Court, but at this stage and I know it is a low standard, but based on that low standard for probable cause and the testimony that Detective Rosas provided, I believe it is sufficient to bind all the charges over to Superior Court, whether it's the scenario that Your Honor posed as far as how our decedent was shot or then and he fired, or how the other passenger how he was shot or he shot back. We don't know who shot first as far as whether it was Mr. Powers or Mr. Terrell. But again, this is probable cause and it is a low standard, and the information provided by the detective is sufficient. We do have our decedent who was shot in the head and he succumbed to those injuries. We have another occupant of the vehicle who was shot twice, one in the thigh area, one in the hand. His information provided that the person who they were going to see in that apartment was a Keandre Johnson. The detective testified that when she got the information from the apartments, that there was a Keandre Johnson who was on the lease for that apartment, and that's where the alleged incident occurred. So we believe, again, that the information provided at this stage by the detective is sufficient to bind the murder and the 2 counts of aggravated assault to Superior Court.
Okay. I've listened to the testimony and the arguments, and I'm gonna find that the evidence is sufficient to bind over these 3 charges based upon the following facts. For some reason, Mr. Powers and Mr. Terrell found themselves at apartment 1602, which belongs to Mr. Johnson. I find, even though Mr. Powers has given 3 statements, I find it credible for him to say, well, I heard the name, but I don't know the person. And so we're at the apartment. He's given several different statements, and that's going to be something that the state will have to deal with. Mr. Clements, if you want to put on a defense at trial, immunity or a complete defense, that'll be something that you'll have to deal with. But I find that based upon what I heard, it's sufficient to bind this over on this low standard. So I'm going to bind over 2022 CW 52169, 170, and 171 to the Superior Court of Clayton County. Mr. Clements, you may be released. Detective Rojas, you may be released, and Mr. Johnson can go back.
Thank you very much,
Judge. And may Detective Rojas be excused?
Yes.
Thank you, Detective.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Have a good day.
And Judge, we are getting the officer ready now. We're getting a hold of the officer on Billingsley. If you can just give us a second. Thank you.
Okay.
And Judge, we are still live on YouTube.
Okay. We're back live on YouTube. For the record, this is going to be position number 5 on my calendar. State of Georgia versus Michael Keith Billingsley. Mr. Billingsley is charged in warrant number 2022 CW 50573 with committing the offense of murder. He's also charged in warrant number 2022 CW 50574 with committing the offense of terroristic threats or acts. He's charged in warrant number 2022 CW 50575 with committing the offense of criminal attempt. What was that criminal attempt?
Robbery.
Robbery. Okay, thank you. He's charged in warrant number 2022 CW 50576 with committing the offense of criminal damage to property in the second degree. He's charged in warrant number 2022 CW 50577 with committing the offense of possession of a firearm or weapon during the commission of a crime. And finally, he's charged in warrant number 2022 CW 50578 with committing the offense of aggravated assault. Mr. Billingsley is present. He's represented here by attorney Tiffany Pleasant. The state is being represented by attorney Cheryl Freeman. Mr. Billingsley, before we get started, I just want to caution you, sir, that nothing you say here is privileged nor is it confidential. So please don't say anything you would not want the whole world to know. Okay, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ms. Freeman, you may swear in your witness and present your case.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear to affirm that the testimony about to provide in the case of State of Georgia versus Michael Billingsley will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Please tell us your name and how you're employed.
My name is Detective Thomas Bastier. I'm employed by Clayton County Police Department, currently assigned to Criminal Investigative Division.
How long have you worked with the Clayton County Police Department?
Approximately 5 years.
Sir, were you assigned to work on a case involving Michael Billingsley of an incident that occurred in April of 2021?
Yes, ma'am.
And regarding that incident, county police officers respond to the area of Clemens Road and Spivey Road in reference to a person shot?
That is correct.
And for your investigation, what did you learn that happened when the officers arrived at that location?
Basically that a gentleman by the name of Tremont Calloway, Michael Billingsley, and another individual followed a victim from the South Lake Mall, and while in traffic attempted to rob said victim with armed robbery with firearms. The victim had his own firearm, and in his vehicle were two juveniles and his partner. So he was protecting himself and his family and proceeded to shoot at Mr. Billingsley and Tremont Calloway. Calloway was struck in the chest and killed. Billingsley and the other gentleman went ahead and left the area and left Mr. Calloway there on the road.
Was Mr. Calloway eventually transported to the hospital?
Yes, he was taken to GBI.
And just so because we're recording, when Mr. Calloway was transported, was he already pronounced deceased?
Yes, ma'am, I believe so.
All right, so going back, just so we're clear, was the decedent, Mr. Calloway, was he riding in a vehicle with Mr. Billingsley?
Yes, that is correct.
And were they the only two people in the vehicle?
No, there was another gentleman that was Marquise Abrams was also present in that vehicle.
Okay. And when they were in the vehicle, were you able to determine who was the driver of that vehicle?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And so at some point, were you able to talk to the victim of the robbery or the attempted robbery?
Yes.
And what was his name?
Mr. Lowe.
Mr. Lowe. Okay. What information was Mr. Lowe able to provide regarding what happened?
Basically that he was he believed to be followed from South Lake Mall. And the vehicle, it was a Challenger, Dodge Challenger, that Mr. Abrams and Mr. Billingsley and Mr. Calloway were in. It pulled off in front of him, attempted to basically block him into traffic, and the two gentlemen got out with firearms brandished, and Mr. Lowe proceeded to use his own firearm and go ahead and defend himself. And as he backed away, his car was struck multiple times by the shooters.
Were you able to take photos of the damage to his vehicle?
Yes, ma'am. CSI did that.
Were shell casings also collected?
Yes, ma'am, there were.
Detective, were you able to determine whose vehicle Mr. Billingsley, and Mr. Calloway were in?
No, we do not know who the vehicle belonged to. The license plate, the Georgia license plate that was on the tag, that was on the vehicle, was actually a stolen tag.
Was there any type of video surveillance to show this incident?
The incident, not necessarily, no, ma'am.
Okay. So at some point when Mr. Billingsley and Mr. Calloway and other gentlemen drove up to Mr. Lowe, did they say anything to him?
I believe Mr. Lowe said something to the effect of, "Hey, give it up," or something along those lines.
And at that point, did Mr. Lowe indicate whether or not he saw those guys with weapons?
Yes. He immediately noticed they were brandishing firearms.
Who all did Mr. Lowe have in the car with him?
He had his girlfriend and two juveniles.
And also, can you describe the damage to Mr. Lowe's vehicle?
It was struck several times by gunfire.
And would that damage to the vehicle be estimated over $500?
Yes, ma'am.
Were any of the passengers in the car with Mr. Lowe struck at all?
No, ma'am.
Were any of them injured in any kind of way?
No, ma'am.
Detective, you also took out a warrant for terroristic threats regarding Mr. Billingsley. Can you tell us what the basis for the terroristic threats was?
Yes, Mr. Billings, he was shooting at a conveyance. Okay. And so anytime you shoot at a vehicle, that's considered terroristic threats, since it's a conveyance.
And did all of that take place in Clayton County?
Yes, ma'am, it did.
How were you able to determine that Michael Billingsley was the person involved in this shooting?
Two ways is there was actually a previous armed robbery in Atlanta, and I was working with an Atlanta detective who informed me that they were working with some females. The females advised us that Mr. Billingsley and Mr. Abrams were with Calloway when he got shot. The other thing is we actually got Mr. Billingsley phone records. Using Cellhawk, you can put him at the incident location at the date and time, and that same phone was actually that uses that phone number was on his person when he was arrested on unrelated charges in Cleveland, Ohio. So working with Cleveland PD, I was able to get a search warrant for the phones to be basically ripped and that information given to me.
Detective, have you since been able to interview Mr. Billingsley?
I attempted to go to Clayton County Jail, and he invoked his rights to an attorney.
And Detective, were you able to get any other information from anyone else other than the Cleveland Police Department to help you learn the identity of Michael Billingsley?
Atlanta Police Department.
Okay, and did you speak to any family members?
Yes. We talked to Mr. Calloway's mother, and she advised us that he left Cleveland and came to Atlanta with Mr. Billingsley, known as Mikey B, and Mr. Abrams.
Is Mr. Abrams the third individual who was in the car?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is he still wanted at this time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Pleasant?
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective, you indicated that you spoke to another officer out of the city of Atlanta, correct?
Yes, another Atlanta detective. Yes.
What's that detective's name?
Detective Henderson.
Henderson?
Yes.
And when did this conversation occur?
When I don't I'm not 100% sure the exact date, ma'am. But it occurred during the course of me investigating the murder of Mr. Tremont Calloway.
Okay, so this murder occurred April 8th of 2021, correct?
I believe so, yes, ma'am.
So how close in proximity did you have the conversation with the detective out of Atlanta?
I'd say maybe a month, maybe less.
30 days or less?
Yes.
And the two females that you referenced, did you personally speak with them?
No, ma'am.
So the information from the two females comes solely from the Atlanta detective?
That is correct.
And precisely what are they saying with regards to Mr. Billingsley?
That he was with Mr. Calloway when he was shot.
And did they make statements as to how they're aware of this information?
Yes, they advised me that that's what Mr. Billingsley said.
So what is the relationship between these two women and Mr. Billingsley?
They performed an armed robbery in Atlanta, and they actually came to Cleveland to go ahead and commit these other crimes. And they have an association with the two females. Okay,
my question was, what is the relationship between the two females and Mr. Billingsley?
They're friends. They have an association.
Are the two females reside in Atlanta?
Yes.
Did they give any other information as to their association with Mr. Billingsley?
Yeah, they told Detective Henderson that they went ahead and committed a robbery in Atlanta at a hotel with him.
That the females committed a robbery in a hotel?
The females, Mr. Billingsley, and I believe Mr. Calloway and Mr. Abrams was there as well, but that's not really my case, ma'am. So I'm not 100% sure of all the details.
But this is the information that you use to connect Mr. Billingsley to the crime in Clayton County.
Partially.
Were there any independent eyewitnesses that came forward who witnessed the exchange between Mr. Lowe and Mr. Calloway and the other individual shooter?
Yeah, there were witnesses on the scene.
How many?
I believe that 3 or 4 written statements were collected.
And out of the 3 or 4 statements collected, did anyone actually describe Mr. Billingsley as participating in this alleged crime?
They were wearing masks and like a black hoodie, so they were not able to give an actual physical description. Just the incident as it occurred.
So as you sit here today, you don't know that Billingsley actually held a gun on April 8th of 2021.
I believe he did, yes.
As you sit here today, you don't know that to be a fact, do you?
To be a fact, I can't say for certain it's a fact. No, ma'am.
Do you have a physical description of Abrams?
Yes, I do.
And is it your position that Abrams is the one that stayed in the car or Billingsley remained in the vehicle?
Abrams stayed in the vehicle.
And what are you basing that on?
I'm basing it on the fact that with the cell records that I got and some Instagram messages, and as well as the fact that when the 2 females that Mr. Billingsley committed another robbery with, they advised that Billingsley was the one out of the vehicle.
But the 2 females weren't physically present when this incident happened in Clayton County, correct?
That is correct.
And you mentioned Instagram messages. What are those? This is my first time hearing. What Instagram messages do you have that allegedly connect my client to this crime?
Communication between his Mikey B account and talking with his sister and some things like that, where she goes ahead and advises that basically Mr. Billingsley killed Tremont.
So you're alleging that his sister tells him that he committed this crime?
That is correct.
And was his sister present on April 8th of 2021?
No, she wasn't.
And these Instagram records, have they been placed into evidence?
Yes.
And his sister, has she been interviewed by you?
Yes, I've spoken with her.
And precisely what did she say during her interview?
She was the one that gave me Mr. Billingsley's Instagram account. Also verified that the 3 gentlemen, Billingsley, Abrams, and Mr. Calloway, were all coming down to Atlanta to commit crimes, and that they were with Mr. Calloway when he was shot and killed.
And who performed the Cellbrite extraction of my client's cell phone? Hello?
I think we lost him.
I think we lost him too.
I invest hours of my time every single day to make these videos possible. Unfortunately, the engagement on my videos has been very low recently. Most of the bond court viewers do not hit the like button on my videos. Please, 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 hit the like button on my videos. The YouTube algorithms heavily favor videos with more likes. If you do not like my videos, then please tell me why in the comments and I can make changes to improve the channel. Thank you to all of you that do hit the like button. I am sorry that you have to hear this repetitive message, but without this message, less than 10% of viewers will like my videos.
Okay, we're live again on YouTube. For the record, this is position 33 on my calendar, State of Georgia versus Javanda Perry. Ms. Perry is charged in warrant number 2022 WA 09462 with committing the offense of open container violation. Ms. Perry is charged in warrant number 2022 WA 09463 with misdemeanor possession of marijuana. She's charged in warrant number 2022 WA 09464 with violation of Georgia Controlled Substance Act. She's charged again in warrant number 2022 WA 0946 with violation of Georgia Controlled Substance Act. She's charged in warrant number 2022 WA 09466 with improper U-turn. She's charged in warrant number 2022 WA 09467 with driving under the influence of alcohol. Miss Perry is present. She's being represented by Miss Attorney Rhonda Hill. The state is present, being represented by Attorney Cheryl Freeman. Miss Perry, I just want you to know that this proceeding is being recorded. Please don't say anything you wouldn't want the whole world to know. Do you understand that, ma'am?
Yes,
Okay.
Judge.
Ms. Freeman, you can swear in your witness and present your case.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Arnold, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear and affirm that the testimony about to provide in the case of State of Georgia versus Javanda Perry will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. You can lower your hand. Please tell us your name and how you're employed.
My name is Patrice C. Arnold, Clayton County Police Department, police officer there.
How long have you worked with the Clayton County Police Department?
I'd say probably about 4 months now.
Were you working in any other law enforcement capacity before coming to Clayton County?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And when you joined the Clayton County Police Department, did you go through a series of training and get certified to be a police officer in the state of Georgia?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And on June 11th of 2022, were you working as a Clayton County police officer conducting general patrol around Terra Boulevard and North Main Street?
Yes, ma'am.
And on that particular day, did you observe a black Honda Civic turn onto North Main Street?
Yes, ma'am.
What drew your attention to this Honda Civic?
The way that it turned, it was a little wide. And also once it made its way onto the lane, it's kind of swerved a little bit, didn't maintain its lane well enough. So that's what pulled attention initially.
Do you recall, were there other cars on the road at this time?
I can't with 100% certainty say whether or not they were or it wasn't at the time. I can't say. I can't remember.
Okay. Do you recall what time of day this was?
I know it was like in the morning time, but it was like in the morning, early morning, probably like 3 o'clock possibly.
Okay. When you saw this Honda Civic and you said it swerved a little bit, what did you observe it do after you saw it swerve?
I made a U-turn, illegally U-turn. It was coming out of North Main, heading northbound, so it'd be going on to Tar Boulevard northbound, and it just kind of just went across and made that U-turn and go straight down into Tar Boulevard southbound.
After observing this Honda Civic making a legal U-turn, did you conduct a traffic stop?
Yes, we did.
Tell us what happened when you conducted that traffic stop.
So we made the stop. Pretty much went up to the car, and just like any other traffic stop, you inform the person why it is, you pull them over and whatnot. Javanda, she pretty much stated, yeah, she was going home for the most part. Pretty much asked her, we talked to her, like, while talking to her though, I mean, you did see like some of the signs, the glossy eyes, the slurred speech, stuff along those lines. From there, just got a license, ran the tag, the standard procedure stuff. And pretty much asked her to, step out of the vehicle. Also, too, we did notice, I did see the bottles in the back of the vehicle on the way up. It was like some, I think it was tequila in the back seat, open containers. One was already empty and one was like partially empty.
And just so we're clear, where were the bottles located?
Behind the driver. One was behind the driver's seat. The other one was behind the passenger seat. So you say in the back seat area.
Was anyone else in the car with Miss Perry at this time?
I think she had a friend with her, I want to say.
Was the friend in the passenger seat?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you stated that you mentioned something about glassy eyes and things of that nature. I need you to be specific. Tell me, what did you observe regarding Miss Perry when you approached her?
Her eyes, they were glossed over. She did have the glossy eyes. And then when she was speaking, like the smell of alcohol beverage was coming off her breath.
After noticing those things, officer, what did you do?
We pretty much had her step out of the vehicle.
After you had Miss Perry step out of the vehicle, did you give her any instructions?
Initially, no, not at that time. Just more or less to observe how she, pretty much how she walked, how she got out of the vehicle.
How did she get out of the vehicle?
I mean, she got out a little stumbly, a little wobbly, but I mean, nothing too crazy at the moment.
After seeing that there was nothing too crazy at the moment, as you stated, what did you ask Miss Perry to do?
She should be willing to take a field sobriety test. She wanted to take one of those.
Was she willing to take one?
Correct. She consent to taking one or whichever.
So at that point, after she consented to taking a field sobriety test, what did you do?
The horizontal gaze, the nystagmus. Explained to her that I wanted to kind of keep her head straight, just follow the tip of the pen with her eyes only, place her feet together, and place her arms to the her side. Just pretty much hold that position for the whole duration of that horizontal gaze and nystagmus process.
How did Miss Perry perform in doing this test?
She kept moving her head. She separated her feet. Her arms never stayed to her side. She kept going on and on about how, us pulling her over for that U-turn was not, we had no right to pull her over. She wasn't focusing on the test itself. Kept telling her, stop moving your head, giving her instructions again, and she eventually kind of just gave up on it.
Officer Arnold, you stated earlier that we talked a little bit about your training to be a Clayton County police officer. In this training, were you given instruction on performing the horizontal gaze nystagmus test?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you also in that training given information regarding the glassed over eyes and the demeanor to look for if you suspected any type of driving under the influence?
Yes, ma'am.
So what were the results of after you said that Miss Perry, how she performed on this horizontal gaze nystagmus test?
Can you say again, you repeat the question?
What were the results of that?
I mean, from what it showed on my eyes she did have nystagmus. She showed in the eyes. And pretty for the most part, it did give us a hint to us that, yes, she was definitely under the influence. Even prior to then, too, we did ask her if she drank before we even started the test. And she herself admitted to us, actually, that she did drink. And her words were like, when we asked her, how much did you drink? She stated, I drank enough, but not enough to not be able to drive, or something to that effect.
Did Miss Perry make any other statements regarding what she had to drink?
I don't recall her stating what she actually had to drink, but I remember her saying that she did drink, but not enough to not be able to drive. Something along those lines.
Did Ms. Perry participate in the breathalyzer?
No, she did not. Yeah.
Did you have a conversation with Ms. Perry regarding taking a breathalyzer?
She was asked after she refused. She didn't want to complete the horizontal gaze nystagmus anymore. She didn't want to complete the rest of the test. So we asked her, "Hey, do you just want to do the breathalyzer test?" And initially she said yes. And once it was out and ready to go, she denied it.
Did you read Ms. Perry implied consent?
Yes, she was read implied consent.
So at some point, was Ms. Perry placed under arrest?
Yes, she was.
Okay. And what was she placed under arrest for?
She was placed under arrest for what we found of her driving under the influence. Then from all of just the DUI itself was what initially got her the arrest. Was driving under the influence. That was what placed her under arrest.
I'm sorry, Officer Arnold, I didn't hear the first part of your response to that last question. Would you repeat the question, Ms. Freeman?
I asked, what was she placed under arrest for?
Driving under the influence. That's what got her placed under arrest, was driving under the influence.
Okay.
When you placed Ms. Perry under arrest, did you conduct an inventory search of any of the car or any of her belongings?
So once she was placed under arrest, she was searched by a female officer for obvious reasons. With that, we did search the vehicle, and the bottles and everything were taken out of there. Now she requested to have her purse with her, because we tried, when a person gets arrested, they take their belongings with them. And she said she wanted her purse. And once we would get in the purse, it was procedure before we place anything or anyone in the vehicles, we have to search it. And that's when that search conducted of the purse and those substances were found.
What was found in the purse?
So she had some baggies in there. One was like, it was like a tan little baggie and it looked powdery and stuff. It looked powdery almost. And then there was some clumps of green substance that was in there. Some was in the baggie and some had fallen out of the baggie that was in it.
I guess the items that have fallen out of the baggie was this substance in her purse?
It was in a purse, yes. Everything was in a purse. And then it was also like a little, I guess like a grinder or some kind of a holder that had some marijuana in it.
At any time, officer, did you or another officer ask to get consent regarding her purse?
I don't recall 100%. I just know she says she wants a purse because she wants to take that with her.
Okay.
She wanted to take it with her. And like I said, before we place anything in the vehicle, any person or item, it is checked before it's placed in the vehicle.
I just wanted to make sure you stated that. I couldn't recall if you had said that because some parts are breaking up. Just want to make sure. Were you able to determine what the substances were that were in the baggies?
Yes, it was brought back to the precinct and it was field tested. And we were able to determine that the brown substance that was powdery and substance was MDMA, and the green clumps were mushrooms.
And both of those items were tested?
Correct.
The results were positive?
Correct.
Did you locate any other narcotics on Ms. Perry or in her car?
That was all we found was what was in that purse.
One of the charges you listed for Ms. Perry was possession of marijuana less than an ounce?
Correct.
Was there marijuana found in the car or in Ms. Perry's purse?
In the purse.
Was it in a bag?
That wasn't like a little container.
Was this container inside of her purse?
Yes.
And was that less than an ounce of marijuana?
Yes.
Officer, how were you able to determine that that substance was marijuana?
From its odor, from what we're looking at it, and it was other officers there who were more senior to me on the scene. Like I said, so just during that period of time, I mean, I'm still fairly new, and with everything I did, I kind of got someone senior around me to verify. So, and they were, for the most part, they were on point, like, hey, this is what it is.
Was the passenger that was in the vehicle, was that person placed under arrest for anything?
No, ma'am.
Did all of this take place in Clayton County?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Ms. Hill?
Thank you, Judge. Let's see, Officer Arnold.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you release the vehicle to the passenger that was in the car?
Say again?
Did you release the vehicle? Was the vehicle released to the passenger that was in the car?
No, ma'am.
Was it towed?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Officer Arnold, when you proceeded to stop Miss Perry, how long did you observe her before she made this turn, this whiteout turn?
I wouldn't say it wasn't that long. It was just one of those situations where it was like a series of multiple turns that happened fairly quickly that raised an eyebrow.
So were you following her at the time?
Oh, I was not following her, ma'am.
Okay, you were sitting idle on the road and observed her?
I was going, I would say, the opposite direction of her initial first turn, and then I proceeded to stop and observe the rest of the series of following turns. Then I moved on and actually went and pulled her over.
Okay, in your earlier testimony, I believe you said that she was driving on North Main Street. Is that right? Or was she driving on Terra Boulevard when she made the U-turn? Do you know which street she was on?
The U-turn itself, it was from North Main onto cut across going down onto South Tyra. So she was northbound on North Main, where you would come out and get onto like North Tyra Boulevard, and she cut straight across and turned down onto South Tyra Boulevard.
Now, I'm not familiar with the roads in Clayton County, but on North Main, is that a divided highway?
Yes.
It is. So, let me see. So, are U-turns on a divided highway, are they common on a divided
Say
highway?
again?
Are U-turns on a divided highway, are they common?
In areas where they are permitted.
Was there a sign where she turned that forbid U-turns?
No, ma'am. Not that I recall, no.
Okay. So the U-turn, if she did make one, was legal.
Say again?
So the U-turn that she made, if she did make one, is legal. Is that correct?
I wouldn't say for certain that it was. Granted, there was not a sign there. From my time of patrolling that area has I've never seen U-turn conducted in that area. It's always been traffic coming off of North Main, flow onto North Tower Boulevard, made their way up the next few lights to conduct the proper U-turn and come back down south.
Okay, but you did not give her a ticket for making a legal U-turn. Oh, you did give her a ticket for making.
She was cited for the U-turn.
Yeah. But as you recall, there was no sign there that forbid a U-turn.
Correct. There was not a sign. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. When Miss Perry arrived at the police station, were there any additional tests conducted on Miss Perry while she was in police custody?
At the prison, she consented to the implied consent for a test of her blood. So when she got to the prison, there was a blood kit that was used and blood was drawn from her.
And what was the result?
Result, I did not, at the time, I didn't get, all we did, we received the results and we placed it in the, boxed it up and placed it in the mail. So at the time, I didn't get the results from the hospital, the jail at the time.
Okay. It was a little unclear. Your testimony earlier was a little bit unclear on how the conversation, how it began when you approached the car to speak to Miss Perry. Could you tell me the first thing you asked Miss Perry for, or how that conversation began when you spoke to her?
As far as like verbatim what happened, I can't recall, but I know like standard procedure, like I said, we walk up and on our way up and our approach from the vehicle, approach to the vehicle, you observe the rear seat, the rear compartment, make your way up. That's where the containers were seen. Then we made a way up. You pretty much informed the driver as far as why it is you pull them over. And then you proceed from there.
Okay. So did you ask Miss Perry for her driver's license and registration before she got out the car, or while she was still seated in the car?
While she was in the car.
While she was in the car. And when that returned, did you check on it to see if it was valid first?
Correct.
And then you returned to the car and asked her to step out?
No, I never left. When we were at the car, I never left the car. I stayed there at the car, did everything was done over the radio, and it came back that everything was good to go.
Okay. And you said, so why did you ask her to step out the car?
Again, like I said, her speech was slurred. Her eyes were glossed over. And then that smell of that's the smell of the alcoholic beverages coming off of her breath.
Okay. Was your body camera operative during this investigation?
I can't recall with 100% certainty. I would hope that it was. I can't recall with 100% certainty that it was.
Okay. Just a couple more questions. At what point was she Mirandized?
After she denied the Mirandized.
I'm sorry, would you repeat that answer?
I know we read implied consent. I can't recall if she was Mirandized.
Okay.
I know implied consent was read. I cannot recall if we read the Miranda rights.
Okay. You said that Miss Perry also wanted to take her purse with her to the jail, and that under, I guess, Clayton County police policy, you were required to search it. Did you let Miss Perry know that you were going to be required to search her purse before removing it from the car?
I can't recall if I stated that or not. I can't recall at the time. Yeah, I can't recall with 100% certainty.
Okay. And just to be clear, the alleged marijuana that was found was not field tested. Is that correct?
Correct.
Let's see. Let's go back to that turn. You said that she made a wide turn when she was turning. Did she go out of the lines?
Yes, correct. She did not maintain the lane. When she made the turn onto North Main, she got there and then she swerved. Then she went back out and made her turn back onto, that's when she conducted an actual U-turn onto South Tower Boulevard. She did not maintain lanes.
So, Officer Arnold, I have to ask, why did you not cite her for failure to maintain lane?
Might be an error on my part or a slip of the mind. But the U-turn was what really prompted that initial pursuit to go ahead, and they did the failure to change lane kind of raised the eyebrow, but the U-turn was like, whoa, what are you doing? And that's what led to me actually going ahead and conducting a traffic stop.
All right. Okay. Let's go to the horizontal nystagmus test. You said that at first she was complying with you and taking the test.
Correct.
And how long were you having her hold the position for? Do you recall?
I cannot recall how long she had to hold that, and I can't recall.
How long? Do you know how long you're supposed to have someone to hold that position?
For the duration of you should hold the position for the entire duration of the horizontal gaze nystagmus. You should not break that position of head straight, hands to the side, feet together. You shouldn't break that for the duration of the test.
But do you recall how long one is supposed to hold this position for? Because I mean, 1 minute as opposed to 10 minutes may not be reasonable for a person to hold that stance for 10 minutes, but maybe 60 seconds is reasonable. So do you recall how long one is supposed to hold the position for?
Are you referring to as prior to the start of the test? How long should they hold that position? Or
when you're conducting the test, how long should you make the person hold this position, and how long should you examine them for to determine whether or not they are able to drive or they are intoxicated?
And remember, it's definitely not the 10 minutes as referred to initially a while ago, but it's a short period of time as you go through the process. I would say the whole process probably at the most be probably under 2 minutes at the most.
Under 2 minutes.
Probably about 2 minutes for the entire horizontal gaze nystagmus portion. Possibly.
Do you recall how long you held her? You said was it about 2 minutes, 5 minutes?
It didn't even get that far into it.
Okay.
Before she started moving ahead and everything else.
Okay. All right. No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor, the state rests.
Does the defense plan on presenting any evidence?
No, Your Honor.
I assume you're going to waive opening, Ms. Freeman?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you have any argument, Ms. Hill?
Yes, Your Honor. I would ask that all the charges be dismissed against Ms. Perry because there seems to be a problem with probable cause in the stop with her. The officer states that she made a wide turn. I mean, initially he cited her for making an illegal U-turn, but there is no evidence that that U-turn was actually illegal. He doesn't mention seeing a sign of any sort that says that it was illegal. It was a divided highway. U-turns are common on a divided highway. He added that, there was a failure to maintain lane, but again, she wasn't even cited for a failure to maintain lane. So the testimony kind of casts a lot of doubt onto the probable cause to stop Ms. Perry in the first place. In addition, as far as the VGSA charges go for the alleged mushrooms, as well as the other drugs, I believe the MDMA drugs that were taken from her purse, she was under arrest, but her personal property should not consent to a search for that. They did not advise her that they would be searching her purse when they took the purse with her to the jail. I mean, when she said she wanted to bring it with her to the jail, it could have been left in the car. And so she did not consent to a search of her purse. And neither that, she was also not Mirandized at any point. There's no evidence that she was, Your Honor. So for those reasons, I ask that all the charges are dismissed today.
Ms. Freeman.
Thank you, Judge. We're asking that all the charges be bound over. When Officer Arnold testified on direct, he talked about how when Ms. Perry turned on to North Main, that she swerved in and out of the lane, and then she made the illegal U-turn, Judge. the fact that he did not charge her with failure to maintain lane should not cast any doubt on the credibility of this officer or the stop when he stopped her for and cited her for making an illegal U-turn. He stated she was in the middle of the intersection when she made that illegal U-turn into Terra Boulevard. So we would say that based on his testimony, at this stage, the stop, he had probable cause to stop her and then proceeded to give her the various tests to determine that she had been driving under the influence. Judge, the narcotics that were located in her purse, Officer Arnold gave testimony as to the procedure and the protocol regarding Clayton County, that because she asked for her purse to come with her to the jail, that that before they could place it in the vehicle, it had to be searched because she wanted to bring those items with her. Also Arnold testified to that. The narcotics were field tested positive for MDMA and the mushrooms. He testified as to who were more senior than he, who indicated that the other substance was in fact marijuana. So based on all of those circumstances, Judge, we're asking that all of the charges be bound over to Superior Court.
Okay. I'm gonna make an observation. This is gonna be an interesting motion to suppress. I'm gonna bind over every count except for the improper U-turn. Officer Arnold initially phrased it as an illegal U-turn, and then on cross-examination said that there were no signs that said that you can't make a U-turn there. He just thought that it was uncommon to make a U-turn there. That doesn't make it illegal. So it's not a stage for a motion to suppress. However, if that stop goes out, there may not be any other evidence. There was testimony about not maintaining lane and a wide turn, and I guess that's something that have to get fleshed out later. But I'm going to bind. Let's see. I'm going to bind over the open container. I'm going to bind over the possession of marijuana less than an ounce. There's testimony about the substance they believe to be marijuana inside of a grinder in her purse. I'm binding over the violation of Georgia Controlled Substance Act for the MDMA and the violation of Georgia Controlled Substance Act for the mushrooms. I'm dismissing the improper U-turn, which is warrant number 2022 WA09466 because of the testimony given by the officer. And I'm going to bind over the DUI alcohol less safe.
Thank you, Your Honor. May this officer be excused?
Yes, he may be excused. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I invest hours of my time every single day to make these videos possible. Unfortunately, the engagement on my videos has been very low recently. Most of the bond court viewers do not hit the like button on my videos. Please, 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 hit the like button on my videos. The YouTube algorithms heavily favor videos with more likes. If you do not like my videos, then please tell me why in the comments and I can make changes to improve the channel. Thank you to all of you that do hit the like button. I am sorry that you have to hear this repetitive message, but without this message, less than 10% of viewers will like my videos.
Thank you to all of my patrons, members, and supporters. You are the reason that I am able to upload new bond courts daily. All members and patrons receive access to the bond court Discord server. Please send me a message on Patreon or leave a comment on YouTube if you are unable to join the server. Thank you all for your support.